were begun shortly after the demise of Maharaj Parikshit. The sacrifice was to continue for 1,000 years, and it is understood that in the beginning, some of the contemporaries of Baladev, the elder brother of Lord Krishna, also visited the sacrificial place. According to some authorities, the present tense is also used to indicate the nearest margin of time from the past. In that sense, the present tense is applied to the reign of Maharaj Parikshit here. For a continuous fact, also, present tense can be used. The principles of Maharaj Parikshit can be still continued, and human society can still be improved if there is determination by the authorities. We can still purge out from the state all the activities of immorality introduced by the personality of Kali if we are determined to take action like Maharaj Parikshit. He allotted some place for Kali, but in fact Kali could not find such places in the world at all because Maharaj Parikshit was strictly vigilant to see that there were no places for gambling, drinking, prostitution, and animal slaughter. Modern administrators want to banish corruption from the state, but fools as they are, they do not know how to do it. They want to issue licenses for gambling houses, wine, and other intoxicating drug houses, brothels, hotel prostitution, and cinema houses, and falsity in every dealing, even in their own, and they want at the same time to drive out corruption from the state. They want the kingdom of God without God consciousness. How can it be possible to adjust two contradictory matters? If we want to drive out corruption from the state, we must first of all organize society to accept the principles of religion, namely austerity, cleanliness, mercy, and truthfulness. And to make the condition favorable, we must close all places of gambling, drinking, prostitution, and falsity. These are some of the practical lessons from the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam. Manjalatimandasya jananjala shalakaya chakshurunmilitanyena tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manabhistam Sapitanyena Bhutale Swayam Rupakadamayam Tataki Svapadantikam. Translation: The most fortunate emperor, Maharaj Parikshit, who was entrusted with the kingdom of Hastinapur by Maharaj Yudhisthira when he desired to retire to the forest, is now ruling the world with great success due to his being glorified by the deeds of the kings of the Kuru dynasty. So the first topic which Srila Prabhupada deals with in the purport is the matter of the present tense being used in this verse. The verse, of course, says that Maharaj Parikshit is now ruling the world with great success. But yet, the Bhagavatam was spoken by Shukadeva Goswami to Maharaj Parikshit at the time when Maharaj Parikshit had 7 days to live. So he died at the end of that period. And then later on, the Bhagavatam was spoken by Sutta Goswami in the forest of Naimisharanya. So it would seem that Maharaj Parikshit was not ruling the planet at that time, and yet the verse says that he's now ruling. So Srila Prabhupada was explaining some details concerning the use of the present tense. So in the course of thinking about that, I happened to look up some information concerning the history of the Bhagavatam, which I thought was interesting. So I thought I would read some of that. This has to do with the question of just when the Bhagavatam was written. So it provides some idea of the chronology which is involved here. So the first point, these points are mainly taken from the first canto, part 1, which we were just reading through. So nonetheless, it's interesting to put them together. So the first point that Srila Prabhupada makes is the following. Amongst mundane scholars, there is some diversity of opinion as to the date of compilation of Srimad Bhagavatam. It is, however, certain from the text of the Bhagavatam that it was compiled before the disappearance of King Parikshit and after the departure of Lord Krishna. When Maharaj Parikshit was ruling the world, as the king of Bharatavarsha, he chastised the personality of Kali. According to the revealed scriptures and astrological calculation, the age of Kali is in its 5,000th year. Therefore, Srimad Bhagavatam was compiled not less than 5,000 years ago. And Srila Prabhupada points out, Mahabharata was compiled before Srimad Bhagavatam, and the Puranas were compiled before Mahabharata. This is an estimation of the date of compilation of the different Vedic literatures. The synopsis of Srimad Bhagavatam was given before the detailed description under instruction of Narada. So, this means then that after Lord Krishna left the planet, and before the death of Maharaj Parikshit, Vyasadeva compiled the Srimad Bhagavatam under instruction from Narada Muni, but he gave a synopsis of that previously when Krishna was still on the planet. So that relates to the story of Vyasadeva speaking the Srimad Bhagavatam to Shukadeva Goswami when he was still in the womb. So, let's see. The story there is related in the 9th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. There it's stated, by the way, that Shukadeva Goswami, let's see, after he came out of the womb of his mother, he generated a simulated Shukadeva Goswami by his mystic powers, who stayed in the home of Vyasadeva, and who later had a daughter. But the real Shukadeva Goswami left home as a wandering mendicant. In any case, here it's stated that the child, Shukadeva Goswami, remained in the womb of his mother for 12 years. And when the father asked the son to come out, the son replied that he would not come out unless he were completely liberated from the influence of Maya. Vyasadeva then assured the child that he would not be influenced by Maya, but the child did not believe his father, for the father was still attached to his wife and children. Vyasadeva then went to Dwarka and informed the personality of Godhead about his problem, and the personality of Godhead, at Vyasadeva's request, went to Vyasadeva's cottage, where he assured the child in the womb that he would not be influenced by Maya. Thus assured, the child came out, but he immediately went away as a Parvajakacharya. When the father, very much aggrieved, began to follow his saintly boy, Shukadeva Goswami, the boy created a duplicate Shukadeva, who later entered family life. So, here it's described that, this is a description of the birth of Shukadeva Goswami. So, Shukadeva Goswami was born when Krishna was still present on the planet, because in fact, it was Krishna who convinced Shukadeva Goswami to come out of the womb after being in the womb for 12 years. Of course, this Shukadeva Goswami was a great mystic yogi, as is shown by the fact that he even created a duplicate of himself immediately after coming out of the womb. But it's described also that Vyasadeva spoke a synopsis of the Bhagavatam to Shukadeva Goswami when he was in the womb, and in this way Shukadeva Goswami became a pure devotee of Krishna, whereas previously he had been situated in Brahman realization. So this synopsis was spoken then before the time of Lord Krishna's departure. But the Bhagavatam was actually compiled by Vyasadeva after the time of Lord Krishna's departure. So that corresponds to the statement that Srila Prabhupada has here. Then, let's see. Oh yes, this statement also relates to that. Srila Vyasadeva knew that the child after his birth would not stay at home. Therefore he, Vyasadeva, impressed upon him the synopsis of the Bhagavatam so that the child could be made attached to the transcendental activities of the Lord. After his birth, the child was still more educated in the subject of the Bhagavatam by recitation of the actual poems. So it would appear that after Shukadeva Goswami was born, later on, Srila Vyasadeva recited the actual poems of the Bhagavatam to him. But before his birth, he just recited a synopsis. So that is described. Then another aspect given here, which is related to questions that are sometimes raised about the Bhagavatam. This has to do with the meaning of Shuka as applied to this personality. In Sanskrit, the parrot is also known as Shuka. When a ripened fruit is cut by the beaks of such birds, its sweet flavor is enhanced. The Vedic fruit, which is mature and ripe in knowledge, is spoken through the lips of Srila Shukadeva Goswami, who is compared to the parrot not for his ability to recite the Bhagavatam exactly as he heard it from his learned father, but for his ability to present the work in a manner that would appeal to all classes of men. So the indication is that Shukadeva Goswami was not literally parroting the Bhagavatam, but he was presenting it in a very poetic fashion. So also there's another reference here indicating that the Srimad Bhagavatam is also called the Shuka Samhita, or the Vedic hymn spoken by Sri Shukadeva Goswami, the great liberated sage. So those were some observations on the history of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So, let's see. In the course of different considerations, I came across some other interesting points. In the 11th canto of the Bhagavatam, there are some other references to these basic regulative principles which are being discussed in these verses regarding Maharaj Parikshit and the age of Kali. Specifically, there's an explanation of the three regulative principles of avoiding meat-eating, intoxication, and illicit sex, according to the Vedic standard. So, in one verse here it is stated, "In this material world, the conditioned soul is always inclined to sex, meat-eating, and intoxication. Therefore, religious scriptures never actually encourage such activities. Although the scriptural injunctions provide for sex through sacred marriage, for meat-eating through sacrificial offerings, and for intoxication through the acceptance of ritual cups of wine, such ceremonies are meant for the ultimate purpose of renunciation." So then it's explained in what sense those different things are allowed. It says, according to the Vedic injunctions, when wine is offered in sacrificial ceremonies, it is later to be consumed by smelling and not by drinking. Similarly, the sacrificial offering of animals is permitted, but there is no provision for wide-scale animal slaughter. Religious sex life is also permitted, but only in marriage for begetting children, and not for sensuous exploitation of the body. Unfortunately, however, the less intelligent materialists cannot understand that their duties in life should be performed purely on the spiritual platform. So, this is an explicit statement in the Bhagavatam about for example, the point that sex is permitted in marriage only for begetting children and not for sense gratification. Also, it's interesting that wine apparently could be offered in some ceremonies involving the worship of demigods. Of course, not for the worship of Lord Vishnu. But one could only drink that by smelling. One wasn't allowed to actually consume it. And then, concerning killing, in the text, the word for sacrificial killing of animals, alambanam, is defined here as prescribed killing, but what comes next is na-himsa, not with violence. So, it's explained that the animals were killed according to the sacrificial system involving the recitation of different Vedic mantras, and the result was that the animal would immediately be elevated to the heavenly planets. So this is certainly different from the situation of slaughtering animals in slaughterhouses and so forth. So that was an observation concerning the regulative principles in the Bhagavatam. So another interesting observation, this is just a sort of list of different things I happen to run across. This concerns the prediction of Lord Chaitanya in the Bhagavatam. Of course, we all know of this verse, Krishna Varnam Sasa Krishnam. It's interesting, though, to see the context in which this appears in the Bhagavatam, because it makes it pretty clear that this is a prediction of Lord Chaitanya. Of course, from an empirical point of view, you could never hope to make an argument along those lines. This is due to the nature of empirical arguments. A skeptic can never be convinced. Practically, that's the basic role of a skeptic. But in any case, it's interesting to see how this verse fits into its context. So I thought I would read for you the basic context of that verse. This involves the instructions by a number of great sages to a certain Vedic king, King Nimi. So King Nimi inquired, "In what colors and forms does the Supreme Personality of Godhead appear in each of the different ages, and with what names and by what types of regulative principles is the Lord worshipped in human society?" So this is a general question about the Yuga avatars, which is being raised by this King Nimi. So Sri Karabhajana replied, "In each of the 4 yugas or ages, Treta, Treta, Dwapara, and Kali, Lord Keshava appears with various complexions, names, and forms, and is thus worshipped by various processes. In Satya Yuga, the Lord is white and 4-armed, has matted locks, and wears a garment of tree bark. He carries a black deerskin, a sacred thread, prayer beads, and the rod and water pot of a brahmachari." So that's a description of the incarnation or Yuga avatar for the Satya Yuga. People in Satya Yuga are peaceful, non-envious, friendly to every creature, and steady in all situations. They worship the Supreme Personality by austere meditation and by internal and external sense control. So, and then it stated, in Satya Yuga, the Lord is glorified by the names Thompson, Suparna, Vaikuntha, Dharma, Yogeshvara, Amala, Ishvara, Purusha, Avyakta, and Paramatma. So this is all a description of the situation in Satya Yuga. It would appear here that the persons in Satya Yuga typically were engaged in the process of meditation, and they were highly qualified for carrying out that process. So there's also, by the way, an interesting comment in the purport, which is coming from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. Apparently, all these different names of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which are listed here, refer to qualities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead which are lacking in conditioned souls. For example, he's known as Dharma, or religion personified, due to the fact that the conditioned souls tend to be irreligious. Therefore, in contrast to the condition of the conditioned soul, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is Dharma. He's the perfect follower of religious principles. Likewise, this term Yogeshvara, meaning that he's perfectly self-controlled, Yogeshvara means master of yoga. And it's pointed out that this term is used by those whose minds are uncontrolled and disturbed by the modes of material nature. Similarly, Amala means uncontaminated, So those who are contaminated by passion and ignorance refer to the Supreme Lord as Amala, uncontaminated. Then Ishvara refers to the Supreme Lord, so persons who are lacking in potency, in other words, who are not the Lord in any sense, refer to the Supreme Personality of Godhead as Ishvara, and so forth. So it's an interesting explanation of these names. Another one is Avyakta, which means unmanifest. So the Lord is called unmanifest by those who are in this manifest world. So that shows how the Supreme Personality of Godhead is transcendental to this world. So in any case, going to the Treta Yuga, in Treta Yuga the Lord appears with a red complexion. He has 4 arms, golden hair, and wears a triple belt representing initiation into each of the 3 Vedas. Embodying the knowledge of worship by sacrificial performance, which is contained in the Rig, Sama, and Yajur Vedas, his symbols are the ladle, spoon, and other implements of sacrifice. In Treta Yuga, those members of human society who are fixed in religiosity and are sincerely interested in achieving the absolute truth worship Lord Hari, who contains within himself all the demigods. The Lord is worshipped by the rituals of sacrifice taught in the 3 Vedas. So, in Treta Yuga, the Lord is glorified by the names Vishnu, Jagya, Krishnigarbha, Sarvadeva, Arukrama, Rishikapi, Jayanta, and Urugaya. So that's Treta Yuga, where the Lord appears with a red color, and he's teaching the process of worship through sacrifice, different types of Vedic sacrifices. And that was the process followed during that age. So then, in Dwapara Yuga, the Supreme Personality of Godhead appears with a dark blue complexion, wearing yellow garments. The Lord's transcendental body is marked in this incarnation with Srivatsa and other distinctive ornaments, and he manifests his personal weapons. My dear King, in Dwapara Yuga, men who desire to know the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the Supreme Enjoyer, worship him in the mood of honoring a great king, following the prescriptions of both the Vedas and the Tantras. Obeisances to you, O Supreme Lord Vasudev, and to your forms of Shankarshan, Prajumna, and Aniruddha. O Supreme Personality of Godhead, all obeisances unto you. O Lord Narayan Rishi, O Creator of the universe, best of personalities, Master of this cosmos and original form of the universe, O Supersoul of all created entities, all homage unto you. So this is the mode of worship in the Dwapara Yuga. O King, in this way people in Dwapara Yuga glorified the Lord of the universe. It was pointed out here also that the different sages were worshiping the Lord in this way from the very beginning of the Dwapara Yuga, even though Lord Krishna actually appeared at the end of the Dwapara Yuga. But nonetheless, this was the mode of worship during that period. So then, the next thing is, in Kali Yuga also, people worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead by following various regulations of the revealed scriptures. Now kindly hear of this from me. It's pointed out here that it said in Kali Yuga also people worship the Supreme. In other words, this might seem surprising considering the nature of Kali Yuga. So then the next verse is this Krishna Varnam. In the age of Kali, intelligent persons perform congregational chanting to worship the incarnation of Godhead, who constantly sings the names of Krishna. Although his complexion is not blackish, he is Krishna himself. He is accompanied by his associate servants, weapons, and confidential companions. So, from the appearance of this verse in the sequence, it would clearly have to refer to the avatar for the Kali Yuga. So, that plus the fact that it's referring to congregational chanting and the description of or of Krishna by someone who is not blackish and so forth. Although, as I say, a skeptic would never want to accept, it seems like a fair statement that this must refer to Lord Chaitanya. Then there are two further verses that come directly after this, which go as follows. These follow the pattern that we saw previously, because in the previous sections describing the different yugas, there would be a description of the personality of Godhead who incarnated during that yuga, and then a description of how he was worshipped. So in these next two verses, it is said, "My dear Lord, you are the Mahapurusha, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and I worship your lotus feet, which are the only eternal object of meditation. Those feet destroy the embarrassing conditions of material life and freely award the greatest desire of the soul, the attainment of pure love of Godhead. My dear Lord, your lotus feet are the shelter of all holy places and of all saintly authorities in the line of devotional service, and are honored by powerful demigods like Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, and Lord Brahma. My Lord, you are so kind that you willingly protect all those who simply bow down to you with respect, and thus you mercifully relieve all the distress of your servants. In conclusion, my Lord, your lotus feet are actually the suitable boat for crossing over the ocean of birth and death. Therefore, even Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva seek shelter at your lotus feet. Then, O Mahapurusha, I worship your lotus feet. You gave up the association of the goddess of fortune and all of her opulence, which is most difficult to renounce, and is hankered after by even the great demigods. Being the most faithful follower of the path of religion, you thus left for the forest in obedience to a Brahman's curse. Out of sheer mercifulness, you chased after the fallen conditioned souls, who were always in pursuit of the false enjoyment of illusion, and at the same time engaged in searching out your own desired object, Lord Shaimashundar. It's described here that this verse is taken by Vaishnavacharyas to refer to both Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Lord Ramachandra. The way that it can be seen as referring to Lord Ramachandra is that, of course, Lord Ramachandra went to the forest, and he was also searching for his desired object, which was Sita, who had been kidnapped by Ravana. That's the interpretation there. But it can apply to Lord Chaitanya, because Lord Chaitanya also was married to the goddess of fortune, and he gave that up and took sannyas. This leaving for the forest is a term that refers to taking sannyas in general. It said that one is left for the forest. I guess one doesn't have to literally go to a forest in order to do that. And then the point of doing this in obedience to a Brahman's curse. I don't know what Brahman's curse was involved in the case of Lord Ramachandra. Maybe someone would know. But in the case of Lord Chaitanya, it in fact happened that a Brahman cursed Lord Chaitanya that he would be bereft of all material opulence. This happened when Lord Chaitanya was holding Sankirtan confidentially in the house of Srivas Thakur. On that occasion, various persons became envious of this. So one time a Brahman approached Lord Chaitanya and snapped his Brahman's thread and cursed Lord Chaitanya that you shall never have any material happiness. And it said that Lord Chaitanya was very glad to hear that. That's the way this is interpreted in reference to Lord Chaitanya. And also, of course, the point of chasing after the fallen conditioned souls who are also always in pursuit of false enjoyment of illusion and so forth. So, and of course then there's the fact that this verse appears in this particular position after the description of the Yuga avatar for the Kali Yuga. So I thought it was interesting to see all of these different verses together in their actual position, because of course it's described that in the Srimad Bhagavatam different avatars and so on are predicted. And in fact, no one can be accepted as a avatar of the Supreme Personality of Godhead unless he is properly predicted in the revealed scriptures such as Srimad Bhagavatam. So, also there are various references to Sankirtan Yajna in this same part. For example, a couple of verses later it says, "Those who are actually advanced in knowledge are able to appreciate the essential value of this age of Kali. Such enlightened persons worship Kali Yuga because in this fallen age all perfection of life can easily be obtained by the performance of Sankirtan." So, specifically using that word also in the verse Sankirtanena. So, those are some observations. Let's see, it's about 6 o'clock. Are there any questions? Yeah? Well, he's not a Yuga avatar. This was specifically referring to the class of incarnations called Yuga avatars. It doesn't cover all the incarnations. The question is whether it's just this planet or the universe, but as far as I can understand, the Yuga avatar appears for the universe as a whole. Although these different avatars, well, apparently the favored place for appearance is in Bharatavarsha. That's where Krishna wants to appear. Let's see, Krishna Garbha. Well, just a second. Yeah? To his parents. Oh yeah? Uh-huh. Oh, maybe that's the reference. So, that was for those in the kitchen just a description of how Lord Ramachandra went to the forest through the curse of a Brahmin, namely that his father Dasarath accidentally shot the son of a Brahmin with an arrow by hunting. And so the Brahmin cursed him that, as you caused me to lose my son, you'll lose yours also. Yeah? Yes, that's true too. Although they're fully capable of doing that. There's great resourcefulness in the area of skepticism. Yeah. Yeah. Well, of course, that even wouldn't be hard to understand even in ordinary mundane terms if Vyasadeva had some plan for what is going to be written, because you don't even have to be Trikalagya to know what you're going to do in the future. Let to speak of someone else. So that might answer the skeptic in that case. Goes to Prabhupada.